Hi, everybody. It's day 2 and it's Explore. So what are we going to do? Students will watch a YouTube video and read Chapter 1, Section 2, Religion, Philosophy, and the Arts. Then the students will fill out slides 8 to 11. They will identify the central idea of the subsection and give 3 important details that support the main idea. So I'll have your video link here. The article link, which is a Doc Hub article, will be right here when you click on it. And here are the notes. I actually labeled them for you this time. So you will just have to, we'll do some together and then you'll have to finish some on your own like we did the last time. So let's go over here. We've got section 2, religion, philosophy, and the arts. Now, if you remember, I'm not going to go over the objectives because that's our learning targets. Our vocabulary words you've seen before. So we have tribute, which is a payment made by a less powerful state or nation to a more powerful one. Immortal, someone or something that lives forever. Sorry about that. Oracle, in ancient Greece, a sacred site used to consult a god or goddess, any priest or priestess who spoke for the gods. Philosopher is someone who used reason to understand the world. In Greece, the earliest philosopher used reason to explain natural events. And then tragedy, a type of serious drama that ends in a disaster for the main character. So those are our key terms that we're going to see. The Athenian leader, Pericles, reminded the citizens of Athens was unique. Our Constitution does not copy the laws of our neighboring states. We are rather a pattern to others than imitators ourselves. Its administration favors the many instead of the few, and this is why it is called a democracy. If we look to the laws, they afford equal justice to all. Poverty does not bar the way if a man is able to serve the state. In short, I say that as a city, we are the school of Greece. Okay, so Pericles' words had a special meaning. They were spoken in the first year of a war with Sparta, another Greek city-state. Eventually, it was the conflict with Sparta that ended Athens' golden age of accomplishment. The Golden Age. The years from 479 BC to 431 BC are called the Golden Age of Athens. During the Golden Age, Athens grew rich from trade and from silver mined by slaves in regions around the city. Tribute or payments made to Athens by its allies added to its wealth. So if I was to say to you, where did the wealth come from? It came from trade. It came from silver that was mined by the slaves, and it came from payments that other Athens or other allies, other people paid to Athens. Okay, so Athenians also made important achievements in the arts, philosophy, and literature, and democracy reached its high point. For about 30 years during the Golden Age, Pericles was the most powerful man in Athenian politics. This well-educated, intelligent man had the best interests of his city at heart. When he made speeches to the Athenians, he could move and persuade them. Pericles was a member of the aristocratic family, but he supported democracy. Around 460 BC, he became a leader of a democratic group. He introduced reforms that strengthened democracy. The most important change was to have the city pay a salary to its officials. This meant that poor citizens could afford to hold a public office. One of the greatest accomplishments under the rule of Pericles was the construction of the Parthenon between 447 and 432 BC. The construction of the Parthenon was part of the general reconstruction of the Acropolis at Athens. Many of these buildings had been destroyed by invaders from Persia about 3 decades earlier. The Parthenon was a temple built to honor the patron or protector of Athens, the goddess Athena. Okay, so what's some important things we need to know, right? So Pericles would be an important person, right? We need to probably know that how they got their riches. And Pericles was an aristocrat. So think about what an aristocrat is. We've talked about that before. And his greatest accomplishment was the Parthenon. Okay. Ancient Greek religious beliefs. Greeks worshipped a family of gods and goddesses called the 12 Olympians. Each ruled different areas of human life and natural world. The chart titled A Family of God gives you more information about some of the Olympians. The Greeks took great care when honoring their gods. They wished to give thanks and to receive blessings, and they also tried to avoid angering the gods. Gods and goddesses, which is one of your subsections. Now, remember, guys and ladies, you need to be taking notes. So if you're not here at school with us and you're watching this video, you're going to want to stop, or if you want to go through the whole video, but I would stop after each section. So our first section was the Golden Age of Greece, and you're going to give 3 important details that you think are important that you want us to remember. Now we're going to go on to gods and goddesses. Wherever the Greeks lived, they built temples to the gods. Because the gods had human forms, they also had many human characteristics. The main difference between gods and humans was that gods were immortal, which meant they lived forever. They also had an awesome power. Mythology tells us that the Greeks worshiped gods led by Zeus, the king of the gods. From Mount Olympus, Greece's highest mountain, Zeus ruled the gods and humanity. In addition to worshiping gods, Greeks also honored mythical heroes like Achilles, whose great deeds are told in the Iliad. Although Greeks worshiped all their gods, each city-state honored one of the 12 gods, in part by building a temple to that god. Athena, for example, was the patron goddess of Athens. The Greeks also honored their gods by holding festivals and by sacrificing animals and offering food to the gods. To honor Zeus, the city-states came together every 4 years for an Olympian festival and games. Modern Olympic Games are based on this tradition. Okay, so you're going to want to come up with 3 details. So if you're watching this video, I'm going to give you one. One of the details that I included was Greeks worship gods and goddesses called the Olympians and avoided angering them. Okay, I thought that was important. I also thought that they worshiped one of the 12 gods depending on the city-state. All right, so we're moving on. The oracles. So we talked about gods, goddesses, and which would relate to religion, right? Now we're going to talk about oracles. In ancient cultures, people often looked to their gods for signs or advice. They wanted the gods to show them how to live or how to behave. The Greeks visited oracles, sacred sites, where it is believed the gods spoke. At these shrines, the people would ask the gods to give them advice or reveal the future. Sometimes the advice came through dreams. Often a response would come in the form of a riddle delivered by priests or priestesses thought to be capable of hearing the voice of gods. Oracles of various gods were located throughout Greece. Heads of state often sought advice on governing and wars from the oracle of the god Apollo at Delphi, an ancient town in central Greece. Because such advice was taken very seriously, the oracles had a great impact on Greek history. And if you look up here, it says Delphi, and it says the Tholos temple at the sanctuary of Athena Pronea was once the gateway to Delphi. In the vase painting, Aegeus, a legendary Athenian king, consults a priestess at Apollo's oracle in Delphi. So think about it, and we mentioned it in the text. Why would you visit an oracle? Like, what was the purpose of going there? So think about that. Here are some gods. Zeus, ruler of all gods and humanity. This is kind of like a chart, and it gives the Greek god or goddess, and then it tells what they are god or goddess of. So we're going to do a little activity at the end of this section. And so you might want to keep this in mind. Maybe one off of this chart might interest you, and you might want to find out a little bit more information about them. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the search for knowledge. Okay, so we've talked about the religion and their worship of different gods and goddesses and what those gods and goddesses were represented. Then we went on and we talked about oracles and where they got their advice and their knowledge from. Now we're going to go on and talk about science and philosophy, like their knowledge. Most Greeks believed that gods were responsible for all natural events, but a few thinkers disagreed. About 150 years ago, 150 years before the golden age of Athens, some people thought about new ways to understand the world. You learned earlier about philosophy, which is a system of beliefs or values. Philosophers believed that people could use the powers of the mind and reason to understand natural events. One of the first philosophers, Thales, believed that the water was the basic material of the world. Everything was made from it. Over the years, various philosophers had other ideas about the universe. They did not do experiments, but they were very careful observers and good thinkers. Democritus, who lived in the 400 BCs, thought that everything was made of tiny particles he called atoms. More than 2,000 years later, modern science showed that he had been correct. So if you look, the reason why we study ancient history is everything that we have here in the modern day usually has a connection. And it may not be exactly alike. Like when we think about democracy, was the democracy of ancient Greece the exact same as modern day here in the United States? No, but we can see where aspects of it came from. Same with science, same with thinking and philosophy. Okay, so everybody should know Socrates, right? So during the Golden Age and later, several important philosophers taught in Athens. One was a man called Socrates. People in the marketplace of Athens could not help but notice this sturdy, round-faced man. He was there at all hours of the day, eagerly discussing wisdom and goodness. Socrates wanted people to consider the true meaning of qualities, such as justice and courage. To do this, he asked questions and made others think about their beliefs. Sometimes they became angry because Socrates often showed them that they didn't know what they were talking about. Know thyself was his most important lesson. Think about it. He's making the people question, right? And possibly question themselves. Do people like it when we are questioned and we doubt ourselves? I don't know about you, but I don't think so. I don't like it. So what happened to Socrates? In 399 BC, Socrates was brought to trial. The authorities accused him of dishonoring the gods and misleading young people. He was sentenced to death by forced suicide, a common sentence in Athens at the time. Socrates drank a cup of hemlock, a poison, and died. Plato and Aristotle, two other famous philosophers. Much of what is known about Socrates comes from the writing of Plato, one of his students. Socrates' death caused Plato to mistrust democracy. In the Republic, Plato wrote that society should be made up of three groups: workers, soldiers, and philosopher rulers. Plato founded a school in Athens called the Academy, where he taught a student named Aristotle. Aristotle believed that the reason should guide the pursuit of knowledge, and he later found his own school, the Lyceum. There's a picture. So we've talked about philosophy, we've talked about thoughts, we've talked about science, we've talked about religion. Now we need to talk about arts. So we've when you look at ancient Greece and we look at a civilization, we hit all the parts of a person's life, right? So we talked about the geography. Just like if we were going to study America, we would study the geography. We studied the economy. We've talked about the government, and we know how the government has evolved and how it was democracy was the last form of government. And now we're going to talk about arts, because in every society we have some form of entertainment, right? Visual and dramatic arts. The ancient Greeks devoted great attention to their arts. The Greeks used visual arts such as architecture and sculpture to glorify and honor their gods. The ancient Greeks are also known as the first playwrights or people who write plays, the Parthenon. Today, the Athenian leader, Pericles, over here, is probably the best known for making Athens a beautiful city. The Acropolis, the religious center of Athens, had been destroyed in 480 BC during one of the city's many wars. Pericles decided to rebuild the Acropolis and create new buildings to glorify the city. The builders of the new Acropolis brought Greek architecture to its highest point. Their most magnificent work was the Parthenon, a temple of the goddess Athena. The temple was made of fine marble. Rows of columns surrounded on all four sides. Within the columns was a room that held the statue of Athena, made of wood, ivory, and gold. The statue rose 40 feet, as high as a four-story building. The great statue of Athena disappeared long ago. However, much of the sculpture on the inside and outside of the temple still exists. Many of the scenes that decorate the Parthenon have three important characteristics. First, they are all full of action. Second, the artist carefully arranged the figures to show balance and order. And third, the sculptures are lifelike and accurate. However, they are ideal or perfect views of humans and animals. These characteristics reflect the goal of Greek art. This goal was to present images of perfection in a balanced and orderly way. Dramas. So we had art, right? Now we're going to talk about drama, okay? Performing art, right? In addition to their achievements in architecture and sculpture, Athenians were the first people known to write dramas. Among the city's greatest achievements were the plays written and produced in the 400s BC during the Golden Age. Some of the most famous Greek plays were tragedies. Now, even when you hear the word tragedy, it makes you kind of sad, doesn't it? Gives you a kind of a sad connotation or feeling. A tragedy is a serious story that usually ends in a disaster for the main character. Often tragedies told of fictional humans who were destroyed when forced to make impossible choices. A Greek tragedy consisted of several scenes that featured the characters of the story. Between the scenes, a chorus chanted or sang poems. In most days, the author used the chorus to give background information, comment on events, or praise the gods. So we have architecture or art, we have dramas, now we're going to have comedies. So during the 400s BC in Athens, poets wrote comedies that made fun of well-known citizens and politicians and also made jokes about the customs of the day. Because of the freedom in Athens, people accepted the humor and the jokes. So we've hit all the aspects of life when you think about it. So we have economy, we talked about government previously, we've talked about geography, we've talked about their religion, which included the gods and the goddesses in Greek mythology. We talked about their knowledge and how they got it from the oracles and the philosophers. We've talked about their entertainment, which was the arts, comedies, plays, dramas. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about the city-states and the people. So, many city-states, one people. The citizens of Greek city-states, such as Athens, had strong patriotic feelings and valued their freedoms. For these reasons, they took a very active role in their government. They were able to develop new ideas in philosophy, religion, government, and the arts, in part because of the value they placed on free thinking. The spread of education and growing wealth through trade with Egypt, Sicily, and other places gave the Greeks the freedom to explore new ideas. Though Athens was the most important city-state, it was not the only one in Greece at this time. City-states in Greece competed against one another, but their citizens spoke the same language and had many of the same customs. They thought of themselves as part of the same group, calling themselves Hellenes. One example, the common culture of the city-states was the Olympic Games, which were held every 4 years throughout ancient Greece. The first recorded Olympic Games were held in 776 BC. Other Olympic Games were held fairly regularly, over the next 1,000 years. Athletes from the city-states around Greece competed for prizes in competitions in running, horse racing, boxing, and many other events. So there's just another form of entertainment was the Olympic Games. Now, the Olympic Games held two purposes. They honored the gods, right? Especially Zeus, and they brought entertainment, kind of exercise too. So that is day 2. That is our section of the chapter. You are going to go through, and I'm going to click back over here. You're going to see each of the subsections. You're going to want to go through and pick out the most important details for those to support or give evidence to that subsection. So like for the golden age of Greece, one thing that I said was during this time, trade in silver was mined by the slaves. So that brought wealth. And I also would add in that they gained or were given tributes from their allies, or allies paid them tributes. Okay. So and I would put that all in one box because that's talking about how they became wealthy. And that was part of the golden age. So if you have any questions, please don't ever hesitate to email me or ask me in class. Please don't be afraid to use this. I think it's really beneficial to sit and listen and follow along. So if you can't think of anything else, but this was section 2, philosophy. It was religion, philosophy, and the arts. So have a wonderful day. If you're watching the video and you want a shield, tell me your favorite restaurant you like to go to. So, and if you tell me what I say, my favorite restaurant probably would be Texas Roadhouse. I love their bread and butter. So you can get 2 shields if you tell me yours and mine. All right. Thanks. Have a great day.